So I finally got through it. The new deal for tenants. Draft consultation survey in a paper in December 2021. The Scottish Government sent this out in terms of looking at reforming the legislation in terms of, really the reality is it's all about rent controls, and it's all about being fair, in their opinion, to everybody involved, all the stakeholders. I'm trying to be diplomatic in saying this. I kind of think by the time I'd been through the 108 pages, I'd really come to the conclusion that really this is a way to try and get rid of private landlords. To be honest, private landlords are a vital thing in terms of our economic reform and recovery, and also provide a really good function in terms of what we do for mobility of labour. Whereas people choose to rent often because they can't afford to buy at all anyway. They also choose to rent as well for flexibility and mobility of labour, and also as well they don't want to take the risk just now of getting a mortgage or buying a house just now because it doesn't provide their needs, because they don't see a need to stay in one location at this point in time. So therefore they might have to move later on, and the costs of acquisition and the costs of sale outweigh the fact of owning home ownership just now. So this is one of the reasons that private landlords are essential to the market. But I'm going to go through some of my responses. In this link itself up here, I've posted the consultation paper itself, this one, the new deal for tenants. But I've also posted my response, so it's an 18-page response. Jeez. I tell you what, it was mind-numbing it sometimes. But please, if you want, take time to read it. If you are involved in the buy-to-let sector, an investor, a private landlord, or anything like that, or any sort of stakeholder in that market, then please take time to read this. This is essential because it will impact on you in the future. And by 2025, this will all be implemented according to the Scottish Government. And it will all be implemented based on your response. So if you don't respond at all, or you fail to respond to your landlord association, which is the Scottish Association of Landlords, then we get you reap what you sow. If you don't sow anything, guess what? You're not going to get any response that's going to be good for you. But I'll actually go through some of the things, the responses I've done. Let me just have a wee quick. Do you suggest how far would be meaningful in tenant participation in private rented sector? This is all about protected. Yeah, absolutely. Like, the first part is all about protected characteristics. Now, it's a new word for minority people. People in minority situations, and that's fine. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And we should be doing something towards that market and making sure they're okay and looked after in terms of that. And it talks about the rights and responsibilities and everything like that. So you'll see that in the consultation itself. It became apparent though, it all started off really well in this consultation document and the questions that we're asking. It became apparent later on that really everything's geared towards being literally being biased. I hate to say it. I tried to keep an open mind about this, but everything was really quite biased against the private landlord. All the statistics was all worked out, so it never really told you what the population sample was. In other words, 65% of this people said this and 35% of the people said that, and it's like, so what was the population size? And in some instances the population size, in other words the audience that they were actually sampling, was only about 200 people. I mean, how on earth could that reflect an accurate description or an accurate reflection of what's actually going on in the market with 200 people? It's like these adverts you see on the television for, shampoos. Everybody said that our shampoo was absolutely wonderful, and then you look in the small print and it says, out of 62 people we sampled, the majority said it was wonderful. Well, 62 people, that's not really a sample. But they get away with doing that, and this is what's happened here, I think. So it's a bit engineered and contrived and towards what they want. I think you can read it at your own leisure. I mean, I really don't want to go over it all over again. But the most important statement was at the rear for me, at the back. And I'll read this out to you because this is what in a nutshell for me. And I'll get my glasses. I might have to read it. I've got reaction lenses, so it's no as if I'm sunbathing in Marbella. I might have to put them on. And I said, finally, did they say? They said actually, do you want to say anything else in relation to? And do you consider the vision and principles of the private rented sector regulator to be the right ones? Are there any additional principles that you think are important? And I actually said no, after going through this in fine detail and actually all the responses that I could respond to. But what I did end with, and really, you know, I'm quite open about this, and as I said, I put the document in for people to download if they want to read it. Well, it's certainly a vote winner, but what they fail to realise is the commercial reality of their decisions. It works well in a spreadsheet, sitting in an office, but we're dealing with people's lives, both tenant and landlord, with the added effect of the unknowns from external stakeholders such as banks, insurers, pension companies, etc. There are far too many variables you can't control in this rent control issue. Universal credit for one. What if universal credit goes higher or lower than your rent control? You can't change the UK government's rules, which are administered outside Scotland. What if the UK bank decides to raise interest rates again and again and again, and a landlord can't pass this cost on in a rent increase because you've stopped the rent control? You'll literally drive people to consider taking their own lives as they see no way out of their financial straitjacket you've put on them if any of these external variables change. Now, I've actually heard of this, and I've known about this in the credit crunch, where there was a few landlords that actually took their own lives because of the situation that they were left in, because they had no way out in the straitjacket they were put in. And I do feel that rent controls in its maximum could end up doing this to someone. Now, the key here is you've got to remember, most landlords have only one or two properties, and they rely on them as a top-up to their pensions or for their future pension, like myself. And you'll affect them as well. There seems to be a genuine lack, actually. The government seems to look at private landlords as completely different entities, as not as individual people, as not as us, if that makes sense. They're a totally different person, and they're looked at a totally different right, because we talk about rights of tenants and we talk about rights of everybody else, but nobody ever talks about rights of private landlords. But we are people like anyone else. Like somebody once said, if you prick me, I will bleed, effectively. I am only human. And I went on to say, I genuinely think the ministers think we all run about in Ferraris and Lamborghinis and have no idea of what the average landlord profile actually is. I don't think they've even taken the time to actually look at that. They're hard-working, decent, honest people. They want to use their money to invest for their future while providing someone with a wonderful home. Like myself. And look at this. And I know there's a lot of landlords out there that'll think like this, because I know them very, very well. Like myself, if the boiler breaks down and the needs replaced, or something urgent needs done for your tenant, and it's a choice between your holiday, your new car for your deposit, or a kitchen for your family, the tenant wins every time. We'll forgo that thing that we've saved up for, or worked hard for, to provide for our tenant, because we're the type of people that are selfless and don't want to see anyone else suffer, but are prepared to suffer ourselves as a result. And then I went on to say, finally, in this, and none of them will take me up on this, but I actually said, you should try shadowing me for a month and see what it's really like to be an investor, a private landlord, and a letting agent. I could tell you one thing, it's not for the faint-hearted. And that's what I think sums it all up in a winner. The majority of private landlords, it's only the ones that are, you know, we've worked out there's 2.5 million landlords in the UK. Now, this is government figures. There's 10,500 landlords which the government think are actually rogue landlords out of these 2.5 million. That is 0.42% of the landlord population. Wowee. 0.42% of the landlord population are rogue landlords. That is minimal in context of what we see in the publicity in the media every single day as a result of what we do. And yet the unsung heroes in the background are never put to the forefront because that's not newsworthy. That doesn't count. And it's these people that are honest, are hardworking, and they work on behalf of their tenants and look after their tenants all the time, are never celebrated and always castigated as a result under the banner of they're a private landlord. And I think it's about time that we actually show people that and demonstrate that as private landlords. But I'll tell you what though, it's not for the faint-hearted. That's the most important thing about being this. And I think if you get a chance, you know, by all means, if you want to, you know, comment, like, support or whatever it is, go and do that. But definitely get involved in the consultation. If your local landlord association, like the Scottish Association of Landlords, is putting back a consultation paper, feed back to them some things that you think it should be after reading the consultation document. The consultation document takes a long time to read. It is in the context of government thinking, if that makes sense. It's bureaucrats. So it's quite stressful actually to go through this. But I had to do it because I've got to respond to it, because it is essential for the future of the property investor industry, the landlords out there as well, and you and us. That's really what it comes down to. So if you've got anything else to say, please private message me. You can contact me direct. My details are on the consultation document. I've no qualms about that. I've actually said to them you could release that information publicly in my reply and let everybody see what I've said. I'm more than happy to do that, but I've put it up here in the top post as well. So feel free to feed that back to me and give me, you know, support yourself. Make sure that your voice is heard. That's really all I'm on here to say. And until next time, guys, bye-bye for now.